All right, today we're going to be in Exodus chapter 27. There are 21 verses in this chapter, and we're going to go over a few different things. It's going to be talking about how to build the altar of burnt offering, the courtyard, and the lampstand. Now, the lampstand only gets 2 verses in this chapter, but yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see. So yeah, let's get started with this on the Christian Boy Podcast. Memory verse for the week is going to be Our memory verse for the week is going to come from Ephesians 6, verse 7. It says, "Serve with a good attitude, as to the Lord and not to men." You are to construct the altar of acacia wood. The altar must be square, 7.5 feet long and 7.5 feet wide. It must be 4.5 feet high. Make horns for it on its 4 corners. The horns are to be one piece. Overlay it with bronze. Make its pots for removing ashes and its shovels, basins, and meat forks and fire pans. Make all of its utensils of bronze. Construct a grate for it of bronze mesh and make 4 bronze rings on the mesh at its 4 corners. Set it below under the altar's ledge so that the mesh comes halfway up the altar. Then make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. The poles are to be inserted into the rings so that the poles are on the 2 sides of the altar when it is carried. Construct the altar with boards so that it is hollow. They are to make it just as it was shown to you on the mountain. You are to make the courtyard for the tabernacle. Make the hangings on the south of the courtyard out of finely spun linen, 150 long on that side. There are to be 20 posts and 20 bronze bases. The hooks and bands of the posts must be silver. Then make the hangings on the north side 150 feet long. There are to be 20 posts and 20 bronze bases. The hooks and the bands of the posts must be silver. Make the hangings of the courtyard on the west side 75 feet long, including their posts and 10 bases. Make the hangings of the courtyard on the east side toward the sunrise 75 feet. Make the hangings on the one side of the gate 22.5 feet, including their 3 posts and their 3 bases. And make the hangings on the other side 22.5 feet, including their 3 posts and their 3 bases. The gate of the courtyard is to have a 30-foot screen embroidered with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen. It is to have 4 posts, including their 4 bases. All the posts around the courtyard are to be banded with silver and have silver hooks and bronze bases. The length of the courtyard is to be 150 feet, the width 75 feet at each end, and the height 7.5 feet, all of it made of finely spun linen. The bases of the posts must be bronze. All the tools of the tabernacle for every use and all its tent pegs, as well as all the pegs of the courtyard, are to be made of bronze. You are to command the Israelites to bring you pure ore from crushed olives for the light, in order to keep the lamp burning continually. In the tent of meeting, outside the veil that is in front of the testimony, Aaron and his sons are to tend the lamp from evening until morning before the Lord. This is a permanent statute for the Israelites throughout their generations. So we see 3 different things here. First off, the altar of burnt offering. What is the altar of burnt offering used for? It's used, believe it or not, to give offerings to the Lord. I'm sorry, I just had to do it. But yeah, the altar of burnt offering was used to give offerings to the Lord, sin offerings, free will offerings, and just offerings of harvest and different things of that sort. So if you were to sin, the priest would offer a lamb in your place or a baby goat in your place, unblemished lamb or goat in your place at the altar of burnt offerings. The courtyard is supposed to have all these beautiful things in there that do, I'm sorry, I'm blind. Courtyard has different basins and different things for the tabernacle, the place for the people to gather to have their animals, to bring them to the altar of burnt offering and different things of that sort. And then we also see again the purple, blue, and scarlet yarn, which are the best colors that you can get during the time. Believe it or not, the colors that we wear now, it's easy for us to obtain these colors and dye our clothing, but it was very difficult to dye clothing. So if you had on different colored clothing, you were probably rich back in the day. And so God's the tabernacle, God's dwelling place, was going to have the most expensive things. The altar itself had to use bronze for its shovels and basins and its meat forks and pots and fire pans. Even the grate was bronze. Nowadays, we have grates made of steel for our grills, or, we use a steel shovel for different things. But they had to make sure everything was a top priority. And then one of the greatest things in here is the lampstand. And it is supposed to remain lit all throughout the time to keep the tabernacle lit and to keep it shining. And this is a permanent statue. One way to interpret that I like to do is I think of how we should have God's light shining in us at all times, regardless of what's going on in our lives or regardless of how we feel. As Christians, we should have God's light shining in us at all times. And that's what I think about. Every time I think about the lampstand and how it's supposed to remain burning continually, I look at my own life and think about times that I've done things or things that I have been doing that I should continue to burn continually and be a light to others and be a light in my own life instead of falling by the wayside or letting the fire go out. So don't let the fire go out within you. Be a permanent lampstand with God. This chapter was pretty short and it was mostly instructions on things to build. I think once we get to every single thing that we have for Exodus that we have to build, I might go through all of them and we might have a few listed items there. But I'm going to just keep on going through these until we get through everything, and then we can talk about every single piece very meticulously. By the way, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to you have to like, share, and don't forget to follow the podcast if you want to. Don't forget that. Not if you want to. You have literally no choice. You got to follow the podcast. I'm kidding. But yeah, follow the podcast, like, share, follow, and God bless you. Continue to strive for what God has for you in your life.